We hear so much about, overnight successes, the prodigies, people who are just naturally gifted.
Right. It's the dominant story, isn't it?
But maybe that's just like half the picture. Today we're doing a deep dive into something that might be even more important for actually reaching those big long-term goals: grit.
Ah, yes, grit. Angela Duckworth's work really brought that idea to the forefront, that combination of passion and, crucially, perseverance.
Exactly. So our mission today is to kind of cut through that myth of just pure innate talent and really get a handle on what effort means for us. We're pulling insights straight from Duckworth's book, Grit: The Power of Passion and Perseverance.
It's really something how stuck we are on the idea of genius. I mean, think about Duckworth's own story.
Right. Her father actually told her point blank, "You're no genius."
Yeah. And then, years down the line, boom, she gets a MacArthur Genius Grant.
Talk about a contradiction. So, okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
This award, the one everyone associates with, pure brain power,
Hmm.
it wasn't suddenly because she was inherently smarter. It was recognizing something completely different about her journey.
Precisely. And how she thought about it, that sort of internal conversation she had with her father's memory, is so revealing.
What did you think?
Well, she basically said, okay, maybe I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I will be the grittiest. She aimed to love her work like he loved his, have that sense of calling, always push herself, and up and up. This is key. Get back up every time she got knocked down.
Wow. That really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That's the core.
Okay, so then things get really interesting when Duckworth looks at West Point, a super challenging place.
Definitely. And they had this puzzle. Why were some cadets who looked perfect on paper dropping out during that intense initial training? Beast.
You'd think getting into West Point is the hard part. They have that incredibly thorough admissions process, right?
Oh, yeah, the whole candidate score. It covers everything: SATs, ACTs, class rank, leadership stuff, physical fitness, the works.
So you've got these cadets who aced everything. They seem like they have all the talent needed.
You'd assume they're set up for success. But a military psychologist, Mike Matthews, found something surprising.
What was it?
Dropping out. It rarely seemed to be about a lack of ability in those areas. It often came down to attitude, specifically a kind of never give up mentality, or the lack of it.
So if it's not just raw talent in this super demanding place, what is the deciding factor?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Duckworth's early research, even before West Point, started pointing towards an answer.
Right, when she's doing her graduate work, she started talking to people at the very top of their games.
Exactly. Leaders in business, art, sports, journalism, you name it. And she asked this, well, seemingly simple question. What makes these super successful people different?
And it wasn't just about IQ scores or natural aptitude, was it?
Not primarily, no. What started emerging, even in those early conversations across all these different fields, was this hint of something else, this non-cognitive factor: grit.
So like a common thread.
Yeah, this underlying pattern of intense, sustained passion combined with just relentless perseverance.
Okay, so after talking to these high flyers, she took her questions somewhere else entirely. The classroom.
Right. This was really where her own understanding started to solidify. She taught seventh grade math, first in a lower income school, and then later at Lowell High School.
Lowell, that's a pretty high-achieving public school, isn't it?
Very much so. So you have this interesting contrast. You might expect at a place like Lowell that the kids with the best test scores coming in would just naturally soar.
Makes sense. But that's not quite what she saw.
Not always. She saw some really bright kids, the ones you'd expect to excel, actually underperform. They didn't quite live up to that perceived potential.
And the flip side.
She also saw students who maybe struggled initially, the ones people might label overachievers, make incredible progress.
Oh.
Through sheer hard work, basically, taking meticulous notes, constantly asking questions until they got it, just refusing to give up when things got tough.
That reminds me, wasn't there a specific student story from Lowell? David Lowen?
Yes. Great example. He apparently struggled quite a bit at first, but he was persistent, kept seeking help, put in the hours,
Yeah.
and he ended up not just doing well in calculus, but getting a perfect score on the AP exam. Went on to
Well,
do great things.
Wow. It really shows those initial scores, those aptitude tests, don't tell the whole story.
Not even close. They miss that whole dimension of effort and resilience.
It definitely makes you rethink how we judge potential. And, Duckworth found This wasn't exactly a new idea.
Mm.
She points to Charles Darwin.
Right. Darwin himself apparently believed that things like zeal and sheer hard work were way more important than just raw intellectual ability.
Did he think he was brilliant?
Quite the opposite, actually. He was pretty candid about himself, said he lacked great quickness of apprehension, wasn't great at abstract thinking. He called himself a plodder.
A plotter who changed the course of science.
Exactly. It just highlights the immense power of being consistent, of sticking with it.
Steady effort beats inconsistent brilliance. It's a good reminder. But here's a twist Duckworth brings up. Even though we say we value hard work,
There's a catch.
there seems to be this subtle bias. Surveys show people rate effort as more important than talent for success, even in hiring. Consciously, we get it.
Okay, so what's the catch?
Well, research by Chia-Young-Se found this hidden naturalness bias. Subconsciously, we tend to admire people who make success look easy, effortless, the natural.
Right. Like there's something magical about it coming easily.
Kind of. And think about the business world, like McKinsey back in the day with their war for talent. The big focus was finding those naturally gifted people.
Right. Identify the innate talent and recruit it heavily.
But Duckworth argues that focus is limited. Just looking for innate talent might mean you miss out on people who develop incredible skills through sheer effort.
Like that anecdote about Scott, the student with amazing grades but lower SATs.
Exactly. Stellar achievement in coursework, but because the SATs weren't top tier, he gets rejected from this top cognitive science program. It makes you ask, when should actual proven achievement count more than potential measured by a test?
It's a tough question,
Right.
which leads right into Duckworth's really bold claim.
The one about effort counting twice.
Yeah. She argues effort factors into the equation twice. Talent matters, but effort matters more.
How does she break that down?
Okay, so she defines talent as how quickly your skills improve when you put in effort. Achievement is what happens when you actually use those skills you've built up.
So effort builds the skill, and effort makes the skill productive.
Exactly. Effort builds skill, talent X, effort equals skill. Then effort makes skill productive. Skill X, effort, achievement. Effort counts twice.
Got it. So talent might give you a faster start, but effort is what keeps you going and actually gets you results. She does acknowledge things like luck and opportunity play a role.
Oh, absolutely. She's
Yeah.
clear about that. But her focus is really on the psychology of achievement, the internal stuff.
It makes you think about people like Irving Berlin.
Yeah, the songwriter. He apparently said things didn't come easily to him at all.
He had to work harder.
Much harder. Pay twice as much attention, he said. But through that, he learned patience, the capacity for just doing it again and again. Repetition.
Which raises an interesting question. Do the naturally talented people always learn that lesson
But
if things come too easily?
do they miss out on understanding the value of struggle? Do they develop that perseverance muscle? That's a good point.
This connects to that treadmill test idea too, doesn't it?
It does. Apparently, early on, this wasn't just about physical endurance. It was also seen as a measure of someone's willingness to push themselves, to keep going when it got uncomfortable.
Like a proxy for grit almost.
Kind of, and George Vaillant did this incredible long-term study following these men for decades.
And what did he find? Any link back to the treadmill?
A significant one, yeah. How long they persisted on that treadmill test early in life correlated with things like their psychological adjustment, income, career success, even life satisfaction way down the road.
Wow. So it wasn't just about being fit, it was about that willingness to push.
Exactly. But grit isn't just staying on the treadmill when it's hard. Duckworth emphasizes it's also about getting back on it tomorrow, eagerly, even after a setback. That resilience.
Right. Not just enduring, but recommitting. Now, to make that perseverance effective, she talks about focus, right? Having a clear goal.
Yes, hugely important. She mentions Warren Buffett's famous exercise.
No, list one. List 25 goals.
Circle your top 5 and then actively avoid the other 20 like the plague.
Huh. Why avoid them?
Because they're distracting. Buffett's point, and Duckworth's, is that real success comes from focusing your finite energy on a very small number of really important top-level goals. They need to fit together, like they're all guided by one internal compass.
Deep commitment to what really matters.
Precisely.
And this ties back to the talent versus effort thing again. There was that study by Catherine Cox Miles.
Ah, the one estimating the childhood IQs of historical figures. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. What was the big takeaway there? Were they all super geniuses?
Well, they were generally smart, yes, but the surprising part was how little IQ correlated with their level of eminence, how much impact they had.
Really? So the difference in IQ between the most famous and the slightly less famous wasn't huge.
Pretty trivial statistically. Cox herself concluded something like,
What was the quote?
high, but not the highest intelligence, combined with the greatest degree of persistence, will achieve greater eminence than the highest degree of intelligence with somewhat less persistence.
Persistence beats brilliance again.
Seems to be a recurring theme.
So boiling it down, Duckworth defines grit as having two main parts.
Yep. First, sustained passion over time. You stick with your interests long term.
And second,
Perseverance. A tendency not to give up when things get hard. Tenacity, doggedness, whatever you want to call it.
passion and perseverance. And she created that grit scale too, didn't she?
Right, as a way for people to kind of self-assess, reflect on their own goals and how they approach challenges.
But the really good news here, the hopeful part, is that grit isn't something you're just born with, right? It's not fixed.
Absolutely not. That's a key message. Grit can grow. It's influenced by nurture, by experience, not just nature.
That's encouraging because people quit things all the time. They give reasons like, oh, I got bored, or it wasn't worth it, or you just couldn't do it.
Right, and Duckworth acknowledges that even really gritty people quit goals sometimes. But the difference is they tend to quit lower-level goals that aren't serving their main top-level purpose. They stay stubborn about that ultimate aim.
Okay, so how does grit grow? She identified some key factors.
Yes, 4 psychological assets that tend to develop over time in people who show that long-term grit. They are interest, practice, purpose, and hope.
Interest, practice, purpose, hope. Okay, so where should we start?
Well, the foundation, the first asset she discusses, is interest. Or passion, as we often call it.
Makes sense. It's hard to persevere at something you hate.
Almost impossible long term. She quotes people like Will Shortz, the crossword puzzle guy, and Jeff Bezos both stressing how vital it is to follow what genuinely interests you.
And there's research backing this up.
Definitely. Studies show people are happier and perform better when their jobs align with their interests. Same for college students. Choose a major you're interested in, you get better grades, less likely to drop out.
Okay, but practically speaking, we can't always just do whatever we find fun for a job, right? Bills need paying.
True, there are constraints. But Duckworth pushes back against the idea that passion is this thing you just magically discover fully formed one day.
It's not like a lightning bolt.
Rarely. She says it's more like discovery followed by development and then a lifetime of deepening. It's a process.
And it takes time to figure out.
Yeah, expecting young kids to know their lifelong passion is probably unrealistic. Interests seem to get more stable around middle school, maybe high school. Before that, they're often quite fragile. They need nurturing.
So parents and teachers shouldn't push too hard for perseverance if the kid isn't actually interested.
It's a balance, right? Perseverance is crucial, but so is passion. You need both halves of grit. You can't expect kids or anyone to stick diligently with something they find fundamentally boring forever.
So especially in the early stages of exploring something, what's important?
Fun and small wins. Feeling like you're making progress. Duckworth cites Benjamin Blue's research on how experts develop those early years are often about enjoyment and positive reinforcement, not intense grinding practice. Don't rush beginners.
Is there an example of this kind of evolving interest?
Yeah, she tells the story of Jane Golden. Started with an interest in art, which eventually led her to run Philadelphia's huge mural arts program. Her passion didn't stay static. It grew, evolved. She found new things to be curious about within that broader field.
So if you're not sure what your passion is, how do you start developing that interest?
Experiment. Try things out. Duckworth uses Will Shortz's crossword analogy again.
How does that apply?
When faced with a tough puzzle, you don't just stare blankly. You start with the clues you do know, or have a hunch about, and build from there.
So even if your interests feel vague, figure out what you definitely don't like and what maybe sounds kind of interesting.
Exactly. Identify those little sparks of potential interest and actively explore them. See where they lead. That's the beginning of cultivating passion.
Okay, so wrapping up this part of our deep dive, the big picture is grit, that blend of passion and perseverance, is a massive driver of achievement, maybe even more than we thought, often outweighing talent.
And crucially, it's not fixed. It can grow. And that growth often starts right there with finding and nurturing a genuine interest.
Which leaves us with a final thought for everyone listening. Think about some area of your life, maybe something you succeeded at or didn't. Did you chalk it up just to talent or lack of it?
Now, maybe reconsider. How much did your passion, your interest, and your sheer willingness to stick with it actually play a role?
And looking forward, what's one small thing, maybe even just a fun little experiment, you could try doing today or this week to explore something you're even mildly curious about?
It might just be the first step towards building more grit and maybe finding something incredibly fulfilling along the way.